In 1956, he was arrested for treason alongside 155 other activists, but they were all acquitted after a grueling 4-year trial. Welcome to Documentary Time channel. As you know, we make documentaries about iconic people, so make sure you subscribe to keep getting these updates in these topics. To tell the story of Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela from his birth in a small rural village to his death as a global icon of peace requires looking at his roots, his large family tree, and the specific events that led to his long imprisonment. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918, in the tiny village of Mvezo, located in the Transkei region of South Africa's Eastern Cape. His birth name was Rolihlahla, a Xhosa word literally meaning pulling the branch of a tree, or colloquially, troublemaker. He was given the English name Nelson on his first day of school by a Methodist missionary teacher, a standard practice for African children at the time. His father, Gadla Henry Mfakaniiswa, was a chief of the Mvezo village and a highly respected principal counselor to the royal house of the Thembu kingdom. He lost his status, wealth, and land after a dispute with a local white colonial magistrate, moving his family to the nearby village of Kunu. He died of tuberculosis when Nelson was just 9 years old. His mother, Nosekini Nonkafi Fanny, was the third of Gadla's 4 wives and a devout Christian. After her husband's death, she took Nelson to the royal homestead at Mkekezweni to ensure he would receive a proper royal upbringing and education under a guardian. Mandela's father practiced polygamy and had 4 wives. Together, they produced 13 children, 9 sisters and 3 brothers, alongside Nelson. Because they were raised within a close-knit communal culture, they grew up closely as siblings. Some of his notable siblings and half-siblings included: Mandela had brothers, Daligkali, Namabandla, and Lalwa. He also had sisters, Libi or Namabandla, Balawi Nothusil, Mabel, who is nicknamed Notanku, Makitswana, and Constance. His younger sister, Libi, later lived with him in Johannesburg when he began his career. Following his father's death in 1927, Nelson was effectively adopted by Chief Janjantaba Dalindibo, the acting regent of the Thembu nation. Raised at the Royal Palace, the Great Place, in Mkekezweni, Mandela grew up watching the regent conduct tribal leadership meetings, which heavily shaped his views on democracy and consensus building. Mandela attended the Clarkberry Boarding Institute and Healdtown Methodist College. In 1939, he enrolled at the elite University of Fort Hare, the only Western-style university for black South Africans at the time. However, in 1940, he was expelled for participating in a student boycott against university policies. Returning home, he found that Regent Janjantaba had arranged a marriage for him. To escape the arranged marriage, Mandela fled to Johannesburg in 1941. There, he worked as a night watchman at a mine, later becoming a law clerk and finishing his Bachelor of Arts degree by correspondence. He eventually studied law at the University of the Witwatersrand, where he was the only black African student in his faculty. Over his lifetime, Mandela married 3 times and had 6 children. In 1944 and 1957, Mandela married Evelyn Toko Mays. She was Walter Sisulu's cousin, a nurse. They later divorced due to his political obsession and her religious focus. Their firstborn daughter, Thembelik, died in a car crash in 1969 while Nelson was in prison. But they also had others children together, like Makazawe, who died at 9 months old, Makatho Lawanika, and Pumla Makazawe. In 1958-1996, Mandela married Winnie Madikizela. She was social worker and prominent anti-apartheid activist. They later separated in 1992, divorced in 1996 after decades of forced separation. Although they got separated, but they had 2 children, Zenani and Zinziswa, who is nicknamed Zindis. In 1998 to 2013, Mandela married Graca Machel. She was humanitarian and widow of Mozambican President Samora Machel. They married on his 80th birthday until his death. They had no children together, Mandela joined the African National Congress, ANC, in 1944, co-founding its youth league, the NCYL. When the white minority government formally instituted apartheid, strict racial segregation laws. In 1948, Mandela's activism intensified. For over a decade, Mandela advocated for nonviolent resistance, organizing mass strikes and civil disobedience. In 1956, he was arrested for treason alongside 155 other activists, but they were all acquitted after a grueling 4-year trial. The turning point came on March 21, 1960, during the Sharpeville massacre, when police opened fire on peaceful black protesters, killing 69 people. The government banned the ANC. Convinced that peaceful protests were futile against a violent regime, Mandela changed strategies. In 1961, Mandela co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe, MK, meaning Spear of the Nation, the armed wing of the ANC. He went completely underground, evading the authorities while wearing disguises, often posing as a driver or a gardener named David Matsume, earning him a nickname, the Black Pimpernel. He secretly slipped out of South Africa to travel across Africa and Europe to secure military training and financial support for MK. Shortly after returning, on August 5, 1962, Mandela was intercepted by police while driving near Howick. He was captured and sentenced to 5 years in prison for leaving the country without a passport and inciting workers to strike. In 1963 to 1964, while Mandela was serving his 5-year sentence, the police raided a secret ANC hideout at Lily's Leaf Farm in Rivonia, a suburb of Johannesburg, on July 11, 1963. They discovered a cache of documents, diaries, and operational plans detailing guerrilla warfare tactics and sabotage operations planned by MK. Mandela was brought from his prison cell to stand trial alongside his close comrades, including Walter Sisulu, Govind Beki, and Ahmed Kathrada, in what became known as the historic Rivonia trial. They were charged with high treason and sabotage, aiming to violently overthrow the government. Facing the very real prospect of the death penalty, Mandela chose not to witness testify, but instead delivered a famous 3-hour speech from the dock on April 20th, 1964, ending with these words: "During my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to this struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." On June 12, 1964, the judge spared them the gallows but sentenced Nelson Mandela and his co-accused to life imprisonment. Mandela was immediately flown to Robben Island, a brutal, isolated prison colony off the coast of Cape Town, beginning his 27 years behind bars. In 1990 to 2013, an international pressure, economic sanctions, and domestic unrest crippled the apartheid government. South African President F.W. de Klerk unbanned the ANC and ordered Mandela's unconditional release. On February 11, 1990, Mandela walked out of prison as a free man. He led intense negotiations to dismantle apartheid peacefully, earning the Nobel Peace Prize alongside de Klerk in 1993. On April 27, 1994, South Africa held its first fully democratic election, and Nelson Mandela was inaugurated as the country's first black president. He served a single term, stepping down voluntarily in 1999 to focus on global humanitarian work, peace mediation, and fighting HIV/AIDS through his foundation. After battling recurring respiratory infections, a legacy of the stone quarry labor and tuberculosis he suffered during his time on Robben Island, Nelson Mandela died peacefully at his home in Houghton, Johannesburg, on December 5, 2013, at the age of 95. His passing was met with a global period of mourning, celebrated by world leaders as the departure of one of history's greatest champions for human dignity. So we appreciate the efforts you used watching this video. But make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Bye-bye.